Dear colleagues, we are probably the most northern participants of this conference, and it's a great honor for us to take part in this wonderful event. So many thanks to all the organizers, and I'm very happy because it's nearly about 60 degrees warmer than it is now at my place. So let us start. Our laboratory investigates mostly different aspects of archaeology and ethnography of the north of Western Siberia, which is in a local Hanty language is called Yugra. That's why it is named the Yugra Laboratory. It is in Surgut city, which is located, well, more or less in the center of the northern Eurasia. So our main goals are to investigate and to preserve the historical and cultural heritage of ancient and traditional societies of northern Eurasia. So we have several permanent expeditions, mainly in the north of Eurasia, in the far north. We are working with a frozen cultural layer. So also many of our works are concentrated around making three-dimensional models of different constructions of that had been excavated during our excavations, both of ancient times, of Middle Ages, and well, for example, this one is the most ancient Neolithic site of northern Siberia, which is a kind of earth wooden construction it to life size using only Neolithic tools. And of course, one of the most important area of our research is studying the migrations and the spread of ceramics production technologies from ancient Neolithic centers in the eastern Eurasia to the north. So of course, we know that the earliest pottery sites are located in northern China, in Japan, and the Russian Far East, and they're dated back, well, probably some around the 14th, the 10th millennium BC, and the earliest ceramics so far comes from Xianzhendun cave in southern China. And in the north of Western Siberia, the earliest ceramics dates back to around the 7th, the 6th millennium BC. So it is much later, but they are actually very similar to early examples known from the East, both in form and in ornamentation, and which suggests that, well, probably there was a stable tradition that has been preserved with the migrations despite thousands of kilometers, thousands of years, so it looks just absolutely the same. And for example, if we try to compare it with Jomon ceramics of Japan, so the earliest one, once large flat-bottomed vessels, sometimes with a belt of pitting impressions. We have absolutely the same ones, but actually they're much younger, of course. And this form is still widely used in ethnography, but actually not for cooking, but to preserve the animal fat in a liquid state necessary to maintain the fire. And actually, in the north, we often use ethnographic materials for comparative studies and for reconstructions, just because, well, people who lived in relative isolation for many centuries have preserved both architecture and material culture practically unchanged. And when we want to investigate the migrations to the north and the initial points of ceramic technology migrations, we want to study the culture of other peoples living in the East Asia who have preserved relict features of ceramics production and who tend to live separately away from agricultural societies. So we chose Li people because, well, it is the southern China where the ancient pretty similar ceramics was found, and also because right until the 1950s, Chinese control over the mountains regions of Hainan was relatively nominal. So the potters who we worked with, and they are now about 80, 90 years old, they lived in Ujishan mountains before the villages were relocated. And that fact allowed them to preserve many ancient traditions up to the present day. So these investigations involve pottery makers from Donghe village. It's the Dongfang County. It's the east of the island where they live now, because there was a government relocation program which was aimed to create more comfortable living conditions for indigenous peoples. And they actually didn't want to go to live somewhere else, but still, well, this company started, so they had nothing to do. And well, a bit of history. There's a little video fragment where we can show you where was the initial point of their living. Right now, it's over there. It's pretty slow. No, doesn't go any further. Okay then. Well, so the Li people, self-named Hlai or Sai, are the indigenous population of the Hainan island, the southernmost province of China. So the earliest mentions in Chinese chronicles say that the Li people were the highlanders that came from northern and central Vietnam. The active development of the island by the Chinese people, by the Han population, began in the Tang dynasty period, so it's about the 7th till the 10th centuries. Chinese migrants, they usually settled mainly in the coastal area, and Li people gradually moved into the mountains. So the contacts between two peoples were pretty rare, mainly based on the barter trade. Li also learned from the Chinese the basics of agriculture and the irrigation, but their living conditions did not allow the skills to be fully used. The Li were rebellious. Actually, they did not want to pay any tolls, so there were military campaigns against them in the Middle Ages, but they usually ended in failure for the Chinese. So since Li people could better navigate in the mountains and the impassable Ujishan, Limushan mountains, so most of the time they were covered in fog, so they were like impenetrable fortresses, something like that. Up until the 1950s, there was almost no control over the mountains of Hainan. And according to the modern data, the Li people are about 1,600,000 people, and which is equal about 15% of the island population. So the Li people we worked with, they were relocated from their original places of residence, which is on the slide, in the 80s. And this village by Chatsun consisted of several houses with thatched roofs, quite far from where the Chinese people lived. So even now, when we wanted to find the driver, many drivers refused to go there with us, saying there was no road, but actually there was one. And now the village is empty, and there should have been an ethnographical village, but it is pretty far from touristic places, touristic routes, so it's pretty hard to get. So right now, Lee, who lived there before, come and keep the village in a good condition. So the hereditary potters from the Donghe village are mostly women, as I said. They're aged about 80, 90 years old. There are no younger potters in the village, and actually nowadays when the borders between modern and traditional culture are gradually blurring, pottery worry that their resettlement to larger populated areas where the Han people are the majority will gradually lead to an ability to find a convenient place for folk crafts, and homemade ceramics will eventually disappear. And despite the new living conditions, the respondents try to save the pottery traditions inherited from their ancestors and do not use modern metal, plastic tools, containers in their ceramic productions, since any violations of established rules can lead to negative consequences. And craftswomen prefer to independently make the necessary attributes from bamboo, from wood, from shells. The Neolithic archaeology of Hainan Island has not been studied deeply enough and includes only a few investigated sites with ceramics. Li people do not have a written language, so therefore there are no sources recording the history, the development of ceramic production, but nevertheless archaeological materials indicate a 6,000-year history of ceramics in Hainan. So the first written mentions of Li pottery take us back to the Song Dynasty. These are chronicles of Zhao Zhugua. He was a geographer, but actually there is no much information about pottery production. So this one is the one that is above. This is from Song Dynasty. Then from Qin Dynasty. This is the 18th, the 19th century. Also not much information. And Shri is the anthropologist of the 20th century. And probably that's actually it. Nothing more. And pottery making is a women's craft. The gender orientation of pottery making, when the skill was passed down only through the female line, from mother to daughter, from mother-in-law to daughter-in-law, is also recorded in later Chinese written sources. It was stated then that women were engaged in productions of dishes and men were involved in the sales of finished products. And barter trade is still preserved in small settlements and even considered preferable because it's some kind of tribute to the behests of the ancestors. And the rules for traditional exchange usually depend on the pot volume. So you can exchange a cauldron, for example, for the amount of the shanlan rice equal to the volume of the cauldron itself. And the purchaser first fills the pot with rice and then pours it into the seller's basket. So we used the historical and cultural approach as a methodological basis for this investigation, and as a part of our field work as a Donghe village, we traced and recorded all the stages of pottery productions. Kaolin clays, common in Hainan, are very suitable for modeling, do not require any additives, and it is usually an orange clay with white inclusions, which was formed as a result of 20,000 years of physical wearing of rocks. And potters collected in ravines near the village, and their ancestors also collected material there. And the depth could be up to 4 meters deep. Respondents claim that during the process of collecting, they smell and taste the clay to determine its suitability, and the taste of clay changes due to the depth or if there are some organic impurities or not. And actually, what is really interesting that our chemical analysis show that there are differences between the samples selected by the potters as suitable and those which were rejected as is unsuitable. So that's very interesting. They just tried it by taste and it said, well, this one are not suitable. Color is also an important selection criteria. So they say that, well, usually they say that 4 selection criteria are being used: by eye, by touch, by taste, and by smell. So the selected clay is dried in an open space for about from 5 to 7 days. The Li potters of the Donghe village use a hollow tree trunk for these purposes, and after the clay is dry enough, it is crushed in a wooden mortar and sifted in homemade sieves with different hole diameters. So water is added, but not much. Not other additives or organic solutions. They are but they are quite rarely being used. And the vessel, so these are the sieves, homemade sieves. Everything you can see is made by these craftswomen. And just to brighten my presentation, there's a small video fragment.
它就是要它水来合成泥了嘛，就这个泥状嘛，捏。土是成型一块块，你得有太阳。thang là châu cũng đơn muôn đơn kêu cho cờ cho không đơn cho
cháu cũng thong ở phun nè mà này về bản tôi cho ấp hai cho hư mà hư chủ viên đâu mà cũng rơi đấy mà
跟你带那个来也是，黎族做的也不一样，它海南有黎族的地方是也是很辛苦的一个过程。
Пошел процесс.
Con lấy bài luôn, bụi ra hơn.
Cái con ở vùng này, nó cũng có trước gì.
Bụi lại là 这种是能够做得好的。
So as you can see, they are just putting bands onto a round base. They know spiral molding from coils forming both the walls and the bottom, but actually they prefer this one. And so the construction of the hollow body begins with rolling the clay into long ropes, depending on the type and size of the vessels. And the next step is smoothing the joints, beating the surface with a flat spatula, removing defects mainly with seashells, wood, and bamboo tools. And as they claim, this is one of the most archaic forms of pottery productions that survives today, using simple tools without the use of the potter wheel. So the rim is always formed from a separate coil placed on the top of the outer edge of the vessels, and potter achieves the desired shape using various type of bamboo knives. There are just a lot of them, and so before drying, the finished ceramics products are left to dry in the shade for 6 or 8 days. So here you can see bamboo knives and shells that are being used, and these vessels are being dried. And the size of the fire pit is determined by the amount of ceramics being fired. It should be an open place for at least about 10 square meters. It should be away from residential buildings, so the large containers are placed first, forming a circle. Small ones are placed in the center, and it is necessary to maintain the distance between the objects. And sometimes the base is made up of 4 stones, branches are laid on them, and then the ceramics is placed upside down. So the entire structure is covered with a thick layer of straw, sometimes coconut shells, which is an additional fuel, and the firing time ranges from 1 to 3 or 4 hours. And when 2/3 of wood has been burned down, the pottery has changed color, the additional straw is being put on the burning pile, and so the vessels are situated inside a thick layer of ash, which has good insulting properties. And after firing, the readiness of a vessel is checked by slight knocks on the surface, and it should sound clear and ringing. What is interesting more, all the technological stages should be followed by mandatory rules, rituals, without which a good product could not be made. For example, potters usually choose a gloomy day to collect raw materials because it is believed that on rainy days the mountains gods sleep and they won't be ever disturbed by clay mining. Or, for example, if during a prayer to the gods any sound is being heard, for example, thunder or an animal growl, then the potters consider this as a sign from the gods that they are preventing the extraction of clay on that day. And on the day of firing, on the contrary, there should be no rain, no typhoon, because this indicates that the gods are angry. There should be no funerals in the village. It is believed that lighting a fire on that day can attract unclear spirits. And if the fire could not be lit immediately, then there is a sacrifice to the gods, usually in the form of chicken, and a prayer to the gods to expel the evil spirit from the fire. And also, during the pottery firing process, men are prohibited to be near the fire. It is believed that the vessel can be split because the male yang, strong energy and power can cause the fire to be hotter and increase the temperature. That's why. And here is the firing process in an open air. One more fragment.
边的那不那叫那个林前头。
他说拿这个锅出来之后再要水来拍打是吧？
这个是
锅都是
树皮
越来越
的。
结实，越硬度。
Yeah, and the last part of the process is also very interesting. Just okay. As you can see, when the firing process is almost complete and the fire gradually goes out, the potter, using a long wooden stick, pulls out the hot pottery vessels and immediately sprays it with the dark red sap of a bark. This is okay. Right, like it is seen over here. So this is the Huayin tree, and actually, according to experimental analysis, the bark sap contains relatively high level of metallic chemical elements such as copper, iron, magnesium, zinc, potassium, sodium. Well, and this multi-spot pottery is very popular among the Li people who believe that it brings luck and blessing to the owner with many children. This is also associated with the cult of the frog, so the symbol of the female world and in aid in achieving family happiness for those who subsequently buy these ceramics. So the spots on the surface symbolize eggs, frog eggs, so the signs of future numerous descendants. And actually frogs are very important. They take a very important place in Li people mythology. Yeah, and so these vessels are ready for sale, and all of them have these spots, red spots. Okay, and just a few words about chemistry, because the chemical investigations are still in progress. But we have some small initial details that we can present for you. So 8 samples of clays and ceramics were chosen to study the structure, the mineral composition, the chemical properties of clay minerals. And it is really interesting that our spectral data, which allows us to estimate the firing temperature of ceramics, showed that this ceramics was fired at a temperature of more than 500 degrees Celsius. That's pretty interesting that we know that the firing was carried out in an oxidizing environment, but the chemical technological analysis showed that it seems to be the reduction firing. So that means that the potters could achieve subsequently high temperatures, and the parameters of reduction firing for ceramics in an open fire. Perhaps it could be connected with the properties of clays, high content of hematite, long-term drying of the product before firing, or the constructions of the fire pit, structures made of branches, straw, coconut shells, so at the final stage in a dense layer of ash. So in a short time, potters could reach temperatures above 800 degrees Celsius and obtain a vessels that just looks like it was fired in a closed kiln. And oh yeah, that's why. And also we also got the elemental composition found by X-ray phase analysis. Showed that the main components of the clays were oxide of silicon, aluminum, iron, potassium. So this probably pretty unique because, for example, some samples exceed the amount of other metals, including rare earth metals, in 2 or more times. So it can be explained by the peculiarities of chemical composition of clay minerals of Hainan Island. So that's we should take a look at it more because, it's pretty unique, really. So these are the results. So what we can see here now, so the selection of raw materials. So informant, they say that selection criteria based on empirical experiments, so they tasted and they choose only light-colored orange clay materials, and it's usually lays very deep. And 8 samples were chosen for chemical research, and one of them was unsuitable. And actually, the potters said without any chemistry, they said that yes, this one is not suitable. So. And when we got the chemical research results, so it showed that yes, it differs, not much, but still. And what more, another interesting point about firing, that they could get very high temperatures in an open fire pit. So that's also very interesting. Well, we didn't say to our chemists that it was an open fire, but they said, oh, it was a kiln. But that's really interesting also. And also ornamentation. So people usually say that the ceramics of Li people is not ornamented, but as we can see, the vegetable sap, the Huayin tree sap, is connected with traditional mythology. So that's also pretty interesting. And also we are now in progress of SEM analysis, so there are some pictures, but it's not ready yet. So maybe next time at the next conference we will show more chemical research results. Yeah, and many thanks to all the Donghe villagers who helped us. And thank you for your attention.